Hello, namaste, and welcome everybody to another episode of Bhutanese Talk. म हुँ Sagar Dangal. Today my guest is Fred Stella. म आजको सो अगाडि बढाउनुभन्दा अगाडि म तपाईँहरूलाई जानकारी गराउन चाहन्छु. फ्रेड नेपाली बोल्नुहुन्न, त्यही भएर आजको मेरो कम्प्लिट सो इङ्ग्लिसमा रहनेछ. However, तपाईँहरूलाई जानकारी गराउँ, फ्रेड एक अमेरिकन हुनुहुन्छ जो वर्षौँ वर्षदेखि हिन्दू धर्ममा इन्भल्भ भएर लागि भएर एउटा डिभोटी हुनुहुन्छ. त्यति मात्रै नभएर उहाँ एक कलाकार, एक लेखक, रेडियो होस्ट अनि यस्तै यस्तै धेरै काममा इन्भल्भ हुनुभएको छ वर्षौँ वर्षदेखि. अनफर्चुनेटली किनकि उहाँको ल्याङ्ग्वेज इङ्ग्लिस हो, त्यही भएर आजको मेरो कम्प्लिट सो फेरि पनि भन्न जाँदैछु इङ्ग्लिसमा हुनेछ. सो यति भन्दै म आजको सो इङ्ग्लिसबाट अगाडि बढाउन चाहन्छु. Alright, once again I'd like to welcome Fred. Welcome for doing this. Thank you so much. So before I start asking you questions, I want to read you a brief bio that I got from you.
That's fine, sure.
Alright, let's get started. Fred Stella is a product of 16 years in Catholic education system, including his time at the University of Detroit, where he obtained his degree in communication and mass media. His interest in Hinduism began at age 15 when studying comparative religions. By the time he was in his mid-30s, he formally embraced Dharma. Over the years, Fred has spent time expanding his knowledge with study and practice in various ashrams and temples in the US and India. In 2009, the West Michigan Hindu temples ordained him as Pracharak, or outreach minister. In 2005, Mr. Stella completed a 30-city lecture in India that in part addressed the challenge of unethical conversion methods by fundamentalist Christians. One of Fred's passion is interfaith dialogue and cooperation. For the past 20 years, he has served as president of the Michigan organization, Interfaith Dialogue Association. In this capacity, he, among other things, hosts programs Common Threads, which airs over local NPR affiliates WGVU-FM. He is also a weekly contributor to the Grand Rapids Press column Ethics and Religion, where he and fellow clerics answer questions on theology, morality, and personal issues. In 2012, Fred has presented with his city's Champion of Diversity Award for his work in interfaith relations. Finally, Fred sits on the executive councils on the Hindu American Foundation. All right, welcome once again, Fred. Thank you very much. So let's start by, again, asking you your personal things. So why don't you start by telling how did you get into Hinduism or Hindu?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what age and what inspired you?
Well, you can go back to different points in my life.
Okay.
So for instance, in my bio, you just read that
Right.
It was a comparative religions class.
Exactly.
Right. But it really goes back farther than this. I remember as a small child, I was probably 4, 5, 6 years old.
Okay.
And I would sit and I would spontaneously meditate.
Okay.
Now, I didn't know what meditation was.
Okay. And you haven't seen anything in TV or you haven't
Not
read
a
anything?
thing.
You would just do it?
Nothing. I would just do it.
Okay.
Yes. I would
Interesting.
just do it. Now, if you walked into a room and I was sitting in a chair and I was doing that and you said, Freddie, what are you doing?
Right.
I would have no idea what to tell you.
And at the age of 15?
No.
Or
This is like 5 or 6.
Oh, wow. Okay.
5 or 6. I had no idea what I was doing.
Okay.
Then, and you may have heard this before, that the music group The Beatles.
I've heard it.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Beatles, I was and continue to this day to be a very huge Beatles fan. And at some point in their career, the Beatles were introduced to Hinduism.
Okay.
They spent several months at an ashram in Rishikesh, or near Rishikesh,
Wow.
learning to meditate and learning the philosophy. And when that happened, something spoke to me. I just said to myself, one of these days, I'm going to be doing something like that.
Like that. Wow.
All right. Then, around the time of me being about 13, I decided that I could not continue to believe in some of the most important points of Christianity.
Okay.
All right. It wasn't that I disliked the religion. I was going to a Catholic school, and I liked my school. I liked going to church.
Right.
But I could no longer accept some of the most important things that Christians are asked to believe,
Okay.
such as people who are not Christian going to hell. I thought that was absurd. The idea that Jesus was unique, that there were no other people like Jesus. He was the only one, and he was co-equal with God. Those are things that just kind of bothered me.
Okay.
But I didn't stop being a Catholic Christian. I continued to go to school. I continued to go to church. I just put all of those things aside, thinking I'm just going to believe what I'm able to believe.
Okay.
Then, when I take my comparative religions class, we come to Hinduism. Now, we had learned about Judaism, we'd learned about Islam, we'd learned about Buddhism, and I really enjoyed learning about all of those. But when it came to Hinduism, something just clicked inside of me. I can't explain it
Okay.
other than perhaps some scars from previous times.
Okay.
That's the only thing I can come up with. So, at the age of 15, I decided to take a self-directed field trip to the only Hindu temple in Detroit at the time. So all of this is happening. I grew up in Detroit.
Wow. Okay.
And so this is 1970, and it was before, now in the Detroit area, they've got like 6, 7 temples.
Right.
Back
right.
then, they only had one.
One temple.
And I went there, and something just struck me. Like, this is the kind of path I would like to follow.
Wow.
Now, I didn't make an immediate decision. Again, I continued with my Catholic practice, but then I started infusing it with more Hindu practices. So I started chanting a mantra.
How did that go? So combining it. Okay.
I mean, I did it personally. I
Okay.
didn't go around my parents and all of that.
Okay.
I kept to myself on this.
all
I
right.
didn't tell my friends
Got
or
it.
anything like that. It was my personal sadhana. And then when I was 30, in my early 30s, I decided that I wanted to more formally associate myself.
So until you in your mid-30s, you continue to be Christian, and you continue to get infused Hinduism and Christianity
Yeah.
together. Is that what it is?
Well, it was a slow crossover. So maybe somewhere in my late 20s, I might have said, "Well, I'm not a Christian,
Okay.
but I'm not a Hindu either."
Right.
All right, I was just in this amorphous state trying to figure out who I was.
Got it.
And finally, in my early 30s, I realized, you know what? Why would you deny it? You're a Hindu, for goodness sake.
Okay.
And this is important, because there are a lot of people like myself who they're white Americans,
Right.
or they could be black Americans. They're non-Indian, non-Nepali,
Right.
They don't come from Hindu culture at all, and they like to adopt certain practices, like I did. They liked to adopt meditation. They liked to adopt reading the Bhagavad Gita, or some of them practicing Hatha Yoga, or some of them even claim to have a guru.
Right.
But if you say, "Well, are you Hindu?" They'll say, "Oh, no. I'm just spiritual." And that's fine for them if they want. But you have to join the community if you want to serve the community. And I felt at some point in my 30s that if I didn't start self-identifying as Hindu
Right.
and join the community, I could never give back.
Okay.
And that is very important. It should be important to everyone who connects with the spiritual community. You're getting something from that community, all
Right.
of the wisdom, all of the spiritual practice, and you're just sitting there taking it all in and not helping people, not helping the community. So that's one of the things that really encouraged me to actually self-identify as a Hindu.
No, that's amazing. You got a great story, and one important thing about you and me, because I tell my friends, I was born in a Hindu family. My parents were Hindu. I was by default.
Yes.
You chose to be one.
That is correct.
You were born in a Christian family and you chose to be one. And somehow I think you care about Hinduism, you're more passionate about, you have studied, and you were into Hinduism more than a lot of defaulted Hindus.
Maybe. But you know what? You could probably say the same thing about many converts to different
Right,
religions. I'll
right.
bet you there are Nepalis and Indians who have converted to Christianity.
Oh, yes.
Who practice their Christianity way more than these default Christians.
I'm not saying anything wrong with it, but
Yeah.
I'm saying, like, even myself, some of the things that you have told me when we met last time, I have never done, or I don't know if I could ever do that, or if I could ever get to being that much passionate about religion. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just something good to see, and also something, wow, even though I was born as a Hindu, but I can never get to that level. Maybe you know what I mean.
You know, here's the wonderful thing about Hinduism. It's not unique to Hinduism, but the religion allows everyone to practice and believe at the level they're at. There should never be, ideally, there should never be anyone who comes to you and says, Sagar, you are not living up to your potential as a Hindu. You got to do A, B, C, and D. You are where you are because that's the level you find yourself in.
Right.
Maybe someday something will inspire for you to up your game. But if it never happens, it never happens. And if it does, fine, wonderful. That's
the life. I guess,
yeah.
All
So
right, that's amazing, Fred. I wanna ask you about. I guess I'm thinking about my audiences and people who normally listen or watch my show. I think before we get in depth, I want to ask you about, since you get involved in Hinduism, what are the studies you have done in terms of Hindus? Like you were, I guess, a lot of people talked about how many years you have spent studying this sastra or this book, and what are your practices, and what people wants to, before people start listening to you, people start believing you, they want to know, I
Sure.
think, the credential, or like, what have you done so I should believe you,
Okay,
right? So let me start asking you that. Like, can you tell me about that?
all right. So in my early days, pretty much, again, from about 16, 17,
Okay.
this temple in Detroit that I talked about,
Okay.
I would attend from time to time, and that's where I first learned the Shastras. That's where I first got my copy of Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
That's also when I started learning the stories from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Puranas. And then when I was a little bit older, going into my 30s, that's when I started taking it even more seriously.
Okay.
And one of the first things I did is I took a home study course for 4 years.
Okay.
There is a sangha that started in India called Yogoda Satsanga Society.
Yogoda. Okay.
All right. And it was founded by one of the great Hindu teachers of the 20th century, Paramhansa Yogananda. And he came to the United States in 1920. And he started calling. He wanted an English name for the Sangha. Okay. So Yogoda Satsanga Society is still the name in India and Nepal, but in the United States, in the Western countries, it's called Self-Realization Fellowship.
Okay.
And he created a 4-year home study course in Dharma. particularly Vedanta and yoga. And of course, by yoga, we're not talking specifically about hatha yoga, the postures, the asanas.
Not only the physical, you're talking about spiritual yoga.
Absolutely. The bhakti, the jnana, okay? So devotion, knowledge and wisdom, and Raja Yoga, the yoga of meditation.
Okay.
And also, are you aware of the ashrams in the town of Ganges?
I have heard about it, but like I said, I am a defaulted
No,
Hindu.
that's
and
okay.
I have very, very little knowledge about, and I mostly have knowledge of Nepali Hindus.
I understand
not
that.
so much in the Indian.
Right,
society.
and I know that there is a difference. So there is a town called Ganges in Michigan.
Okay.
It's about 45 minutes outside of Grand Rapids.
Okay.
And it just so happens that there was an ashram that was created in the 70s by the Vedanta Society, which is the American branch of the Ramakrishna Mission. So all of the monks there are devotees of Vivekananda and Ramakrishna.
Oh, wow, okay.
And there was a great teacher there in the 70s and 80s, and I believe part of the 90s. And so I would go there to learn from the monks who were there. And then I would take time for retreats in ashrams and study there. And sometimes these are just weekend retreats.
Right.
All right? But you can really learn a lot if you have very intense study.
So these were all translated in English, I believe.
Everything
right?
is
Everything
in English. I have very little comprehension of Hindi. I have picked up over the years Sanskrit.
Okay.
But even my Sanskrit, I want to be clear, I do not read Devanagari. All of the Sanskrit that I know is transliterated into Roman script.
Okay.
So it just has never been a passion for me to be able to study in the original languages. So I would say, and then of course I started becoming very active with the West Michigan Hindu Temple, and it's there that I learned the more ritual-oriented Hinduism. I was the thing that really drew me to the Dharma was practices such as meditation and japa yoga and kirtan. Those are the things that really excited me. And then I come the temple, of course, is only about 11 years old now, and I knew very little. I'd been to Poojas, but I didn't really understand them the way I have since the temple has opened and that now I'm a regular. Well, I'm the Pracharak, as you mentioned in there. So I'm the lecturer for the temple. I'm sort of an acharya. When people call the temple, as they often do, or email the temple, they could be a school, they could be a church, they could be a civic organization, and they either want someone to come to their place and give a lecture, or they want a tour of the temple. I am the person that they get in contact with, and I'm the person who gives them the tour.
Tours and everything.
And I would say, there are certainly people at the temple who are as educated or perhaps even more educated than I when it comes to Hindu Dharma. But one benefit that I have is I do have 16 years of Christian education, and I'm able to speak to non-Hindus. I can use terminology, and I can show the similarities and the differences between Hinduism and mostly Christianity, that hopefully get people to understand. And bring clarity to what we are practicing and what we believe. And I don't try to pretend that, Christianity and Hinduism or Hinduism and Islam or any other religions are just the same, but there clearly are some very significant parallels.
Absolutely.
And so I try to draw that out, again, as well as say, this is decidedly different. The concept of samsara, of reincarnation, is drastically different from the Christian concept of a physical resurrection. You can't have both, really. So I'm just open about that. So that, I hope, explains a little bit about my education.
Right. So it's to sum up, you have mostly done home study, and you have studied through. You said 4 years of study through Veda Sangha, if I wrote that right.
Yogoda Satsanga.
Yogoda Satsanga. Yogoda,
That's the Indian
Okay.
understanding.
So let me add a few more follow up on that one. So you have studied Gita,
Yes.
right? Gita, that's the Indian Nepali accent Gita. So, and you have studied Ved.
Yes, I've studied the Vedas.
All four of them. There are four types of Ved, right?
I would. Let me tell you this: most of my Vedic studies
Right.
are in the Upanishads.
Upanishad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And I am nowhere near as educated in the Upanishads as I am the Gita.
Gita.
But I have a working knowledge
Okay.
of it. One of the things I do, you might appreciate this. You've studied Shakespeare in school? No? Okay.
A little bit.
Okay, yeah. All right. Most people have at least read one Shakespeare play in their life, if they've gone to school.
Right.
There is a translation of the Bhagavad Gita that is translated in the language very similar to Shakespeare,
Okay.
which means it's very beautiful and very poetic. I've memorized several chapters. I'm in the process of I have memorized 9.5 chapters.
Oh wow.
The first 9.5 chapters of the
Okay.
Gita, and I have given public recitations of them to non-Hindu audiences.
I've seen your video. Is that one of them? I saw your one YouTube video.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there you go.
I have seen
That was at
one
a
of them.
church.
Okay. Yep. Somewhere I couldn't tell, but I think it was about 20 minutes long. You recite the first chapter and second chapter or something.
It was
Gita.
probably the first chapter,
Okay.
and sometimes I do the first and part of the second.
Yep, I saw that.
And people are really drawn to that because of the language. The language pulls them in, the poetry pulls them in,
Right.
and then I'm able to talk about the philosophy behind it. So,
No, that's amazing, because a lot of things I didn't know about you when I first time heard about you, and I was really interested to talk to you, to learn more about you. But one thing that I'm really interested, Fred, and I told you this when we met last time in a coffee, is the way I have seen Hinduism, the rituals and practices in Nepal, is different from what's done in India.
yes, that's true.
And then the question that I am kind of confused and not sure about is, if we have one common books, common shastra, common Gita, right? Or I guess my understanding is, I'm not a scholar, I'm not an expert in this, but if we have a common book for all Hinduism, my understanding was you should have the same type of rituals, same festivals in terms of no matter where you live, whether you live in Nepal, India, Bhutan, or anywhere. But I see the way we practice certain things, and I'll give you an example. Diwali. India is one of the biggest festivals, is Diwali for Indians, right?
Yes.
And we also have, in Nepal we call Tihar. They also say Deepawali in Nepal. But the way we celebrate that is very different. In Nepal, we celebrate that as a siblings festival, where sisters put tikka, meaning it's made out of raw rice. They put red color in it. They put some yogurt in it, make sure it's a little liquidy, and they put in their forehead.
Yes.
Not just that and then other stuff. They put some type of special color in their forehead and some in the air. So it's taken as a sisters praying for their brothers, for their safeguard, safety, and long life.
Oh yes, and there's an Indian festival, and the name is escaping me right now.
Is that Vaidus?
Yeah,
but that's different. We also have that in Nepal. They have that separately.
Okay.
They have that separate. But my point is this: why is there differences?
I'll tell you, because a lot of how we celebrate, how we express our understandings of Hindu Dharma are not entirely based on Scripture. They go above and beyond that. And remember that while it's true, all Hindus theoretically embrace to some degree the four Vedas. I mean, those are the foundational books of Hinduism. Now, you have many, many other scriptures that are common to one group of Hindus, but not to the other.
Right.
Okay, so for instance, primarily in the Bhutanese community, the Pali community, they tend to be Vaishnavas. Okay? They tend to be. Not entirely.
Right.
Okay?
But there's some complications of caste, and we're going to talk about it in a bit.
But by and large, I've gone to so many Poojas over the past several years in the Bhutanese community, and Ram and Sita tend to be at the forefront, by and large. I've also seen Krishna and Radha there, too.
The Vishnu, I think, is...
Vishnu, well, yeah,
Vishnu,
but I mean, those are emanations of Vishnu.
Right.
All right? Now, the Shaivites, the people who honor the divine in the form of Shiva, they also are strongly attracted to the Agamas. That's another series of scriptures that the Vaishnavas don't really tend to focus on, but the Shaivites do.
Wait, what is that book called?
Agamas. It's a collection, Agamas.
Okay.
So it's plural, the same way we say Vedas.
Vedas, okay.
And so you're going to have such a variety of expression, and a lot of it is geographical, where you have, you're talking about the difference between Nepal and India. Look at the difference between North India and South India. I shouldn't say completely different. And a lot of people, they look at that and they have a hard time understanding, because they think, well, Muslims, they don't have 6 different kinds of Eid, which is their name of their big holidays.
Eid.
Okay, yeah. All right. Eid is Eid. There's not an Egyptian Eid and a Saudi Arabian Eid, and Christmas is Christmas.
Right.
Okay, although Western Christians celebrate it December 25th, and Eastern Christians, like in Greece and Ukraine, they celebrate it in January.
Oh, really?
So yeah, they do. So a lot of it is cultural, and the diversity within Hinduism, for the most part, I love and I embrace. The parts of Hinduism that are expressed differently from one to the other, they can have negative consequences as well. But in terms of celebrations, in terms of holidays, in terms of ritual, I think that's just fine. So, for instance, you go to the West Michigan Hindu Temple.
Right. I have been there a few times.
Yeah. And you go to a puja. A puja is very ritual oriented, right?
Right.
The priest is very exact what he does.
Right.
He just doesn't throw in something because he feels like it.
Yeah.
And you can't make any requests.
Nope,
Okay.
like how many certain things he needed and where it needs to be and what direction this need to face.
Exactly.
Yep. It's very, very, specific how they want it.
Right.
Things.
Now, if you were to come to our meditation services, which we hold, and we don't hold them at the temple, we hold them off-site, you would find none of that. None of that very exacting ritualistic performance. You would simply have people listening to the readings of the Gita, chanting, and meditating.
Right.
No ritual. You may call it a little bit of ritual. You stand and you pray. You say that's ritual, but not heavy ritual at all, and not so circumscribed that you don't have to worry about where you're facing all the time.
I think that's where the community that I grew, or the community I have seen, differ from the rest of the Hindus.
Mm-hmm.
The Bhutanese community, the community I am part of, is so ritualistic. I have seen very little meditation. I know there is emphasis that you should meditate every day in the morning. There is that emphasis, but I have not seen people
practicing
like they practice the rituals. There's so many rituals they practice. Like you're talking about Poojas. There are times when my mom would do maybe 5 or 6 little Poojas type per year, and there's one you do every year. They call Shraddha.
I know Shraddha, sure, for
right?
your ancestors.
For your ancestors, you do it, right? And if you move to a new house, you do a puja for the new house. And if they say they did Graha Jap, like if something bad in your astrologers say something bad in your astrology, they try to do puja for that. And there's so many pujas there, right? So to that point, I feel like, is it safe to say, or is it fair to say the community I grew up in is not as modernized as some of the community you're involved in Indian community? Is that what it is?
Well, let's see here. I would say the one good thing about pujas is they bring people together.
Right.
They bring people together in community. And I appreciate when I'm with Indian Hindus and Nepali Hindus, that there is a sense of structure. They all know what it is. They're all doing something together. There is something, a very psychological, emotional, and spiritual that those rituals connect as glue to the community.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, but at the same time, what I often think is, I don't want to hand my spiritual benefit, my spiritual health over to somebody else and have them regulate it. Like just give it to a priest. You know how some people, they just say, like, let's say I hated dealing with money.
Okay.
Maybe I make a lot of money, but I don't like dealing with it.
Right.
So you're my accountant, and I'm going to go, Sagar, here, take all of these books, take all of these bills, you just do it. I'm just going to go out and do what I want. Well, that's kind of stupid. I should have some degree of knowledge. I should force myself because I want to make sure that Sagar is still looking out for my interests.
Absolutely.
In the same way that some people, they go to the doctor, heal me, take care of me. And I'm forgetting that, well, wait a minute here, I'm 45 pounds overweight. And I smoke. And I'm just saying, doctor, no, wait a minute. I have to take care of my own health too. It's a partnership. So people who completely rely on pujas, particularly when a priest is doing them,
right,
and sort of hand their spiritual destiny over to that priest, I don't like to openly criticize it. Let me just say that it's not the way I want to control my spiritual life. Okay? Right. But the good thing about Hinduism is that it allows you to be at the level you are. Just I said that a few minutes ago about you.
Right.
So people, if the only thing that they do to express their Hinduism is A, be a good person, because we should all be good people as best as we can, and B, go to pujas, then that's fine. I personally think that the more you take your own control of your spiritual life, I think the opportunity for growth can be wonderful. So it's a personal thing. And you mentioned the way you brought it up, like, well, do you think that our way of doing it is not as good as your modern way?
Which is correct. So let me give an example to elaborate on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm repeating what I said in the beginning. A lot of time, before I get to that, let me back up a little bit and let me bring something up that helps my conversation going forward. So you started as a Catholic Christian, right? So for someone like a defaulted Hindu, you were an outsider, right? I mean, they think, like, to my knowledge, to my understanding, a lot of people think someone who is not born in Hindu culture, Hindu community, they are outsider. They could convert into Hinduism, or same goes to the Christianity. For if someone from Hindu community go to the Christianity, they are converting. They are not by default, right? So what I want to ask you is, you being outsider, you chose to go to become a Hindu and follow Hinduism, but the way you are following and the way you're doing things are so different from how my parents are doing.
Yes, that is true. I'm sure that it is. Yes.
And then that makes people confused. Like, wait, so he's also Hindu, but he's doing completely differently. The way he practices, the way he sees things, the way he believes is so different from what my parents are doing. And which one is right? Which one should I pick?
See, that's a personal decision. What I want to say is that I was just leading up to exactly this point. While my form of Hinduism may be different from your parents, it's not because it's a so-called modern Western way. The kind of Hinduism that I've been practicing goes back as many thousands of years as your parents' Hinduism do. There have always been, to the best of my understanding, multiple tracts of Hinduism. There's always been, or at least as far back as I say I can go, a ritual-oriented Hinduism,
right,
and a contemplative, a more yogic Hinduism.
Okay, right. That's
okay. All right. So I mentioned that the organization I started with, or that I'm still with,
right,
Yogoda Satsanga Society of India. All right, that's Indian Hindu, and that organization and the tradition that even precedes it has always been less ritual,
right,
more contemplation, more devotion, more bhakti.
Right.
So it's just as authentic as the ritual-oriented Hinduism. And I would never say to somebody like your parents that you're practicing incorrectly. And I have never been told by anyone, by any Hindu, that my version of Hinduism is substandard. That, you've got to go to the temple more. You've got to do more rituals. Right. You've got to have your charts done every other day. No. I just don't hear that. When we disagree, say my Hinduism versus your Hinduism tends to be more on social issues.
Right. And talking about social issues, because we again, I ask you questions about one thing that still I don't like, and I myself being in this religion that I have very generously followed a lot of festivals and rituals, and I think I was much more, I guess, devotee when I was young than I'm right now.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that I don't like people follow in the name of religion is caste system. Caste system is so deep in the Hinduism. I don't know how deep in India, but in Nepal, and specifically in the Bhutanese, it's so deeply practiced religion. Practice in the name of religion. And I myself, being a Hindu, I can't accept it doesn't make sense to me.
No, of course not. I am as deeply opposed to caste prejudice and bigotry as you are, and as any right-thinking human being. The idea that by birth alone, your worth is qualified.
Right.
I find that so tremendously offensive. But here's the thing. First of all, now it is true that the Vedas do talk about, and I don't even like the word caste. I know we'll have to use that, but as you know, there are two ways to talk about the different communities, Varna and Jati. And caste can be considered either Varna or Jat. And for non-Hindus, we won't get into the weeds on all of that. But here's the thing. While the Vedas talk about caste, they talk about the divisions in society.
Right.
And are you familiar with the idea of the human body, how they describe the human body? So, the Brahmins are the head. Yeah, and so on, all the way down to the Sudras, the laborers. Yeah, the feet. Okay. Well, that is simply a very good understanding of how society works. And there has never been a society that has veered very much from that. The people who are the intellectuals, the people who are of the governing class, tend to be, up here,
Okay.
and people who are laborers tend to be on the lower strata of society.
Okay.
Now, the challenge is, when it comes to the caste system as we understand it, practiced in India and Nepal,
Right.
is that you are locked into
Your caste.
your
Lastly.
caste
Yep.
by where you're born, who you're born to.
Correct.
All right. Now keep in mind also that is not unique to Hinduism. Europe has always, they don't call it caste, they would call it class. But clearly, somebody who is born to a peasant family
Right.
in England would never sit on a throne. They would never work in a bank. They would never be a property owner.
They are not allowed to, or they just
They're not
won't?
allowed to.
They're not allowed to.
Yeah.
See,
Now, this is not today.
Right. Yeah. Long
But
time.
in
Yeah.
history,
Right.
yes, you were born a peasant, you die a peasant. You were born a nobleman, you die a nobleman. There was the sense of pedigree. Okay? And that's why, for instance, even today in Europe, there are people who have these very highfalutin titles, like the Duke of so-and-so or the Countess of so-and-so. They could be dirt poor. Many of them are very poor because they've inherited this pedigree, this title coming from this family,
Right.
but they no longer own land, or they had businesses that failed. So, a couple of points so far. Yes, it's true. The Vedas talk about society and the various divisions of labor. Those divisions of labor are going to exist regardless of culture or society. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. The problem then is when we say that somebody is born this way and has to stay this way. And here's something that a lot of people don't know, including Hindus, that the scriptures do not say that one must be born, that if somebody is trapped in a caste.
Okay.
That earlier in Vedic times, there are several examples of this, of people born in one caste and dying in another.
Okay.
Being able to move from one to the other. And here's the thing that when we met before, it just almost made me cry when you talked about the so-called untouchables, which are now
that's
called
what the caste thing
Dalits.
is.
Yeah. Here's the thing too. The scriptures don't even mention Dalits. There's 4 castes, right? And Dalit, which is now sort of a 5th caste, doesn't exist. That developed over time. That was a part of the corruption of the caste system. And here's another thing that people don't realize, that at least in India, I don't know about Nepal, that caste, it became more of a social, what's the word, corruption, as opposed to a religious corruption, meaning that you have caste bigotry going on in various religions. The Catholic Church recently issued an apology to low caste Catholics in India, low caste Catholics, because they were being persecuted as well. About, 10, 15 years ago,
Well, I didn't know that.
there was a problem when a group of people met on Christmas Eve. These Catholics were going to church in India,
Okay.
and the church was an upper caste Catholic church, and the lower caste Catholics wanted to go to midnight mass with them, and the upper caste Catholics tried to stop them from being in the church at the same time. So the priest actually had to do 2 masses. He did one at midnight and one an hour later. One for the upper caste, to for
The lower caste.
the lower caste. So I do not want at all to think that I am an apologist for people who believe in caste whatsoever. I want to see the caste system either completely abolished,
Right.
or revert back to the original intent, where yes, you're a laborer, but I do not simply define you by what you do for a living. All right, so you could be a laborer. I respect you. You could be an entrepreneur, a businessman.
Right.
I respect you. You could be a warrior or in government. I respect you. Or you could be a Brahmin. You could be an intellectual, a priest, or a teacher. Whatever. I respect you. The idea, and this is what really, really breaks my heart, the idea that Dalits are considered by some to be impure.
Right, exactly. That's so sad.
It's very sad.
It's sad.
It is.
And I think the point I want to add to that, I don't know how the Indian community practice. I'm not entirely sure because I want to make that clear. But the Bhutanese and Nepali community, yeah, people probably don't say it out loud, or they probably don't want to say in public, but they practice in their house, right? They deeply practice, and they probably tell their kids what to do, what not to do, or who to be friends with and who not to be friends with, and stuff like that, based on their religious belief that some of the lower caste people are meant to be lower. They're not meant to go up the level just because they were born in that caste, or just for instance, in what I have learned or what I have experienced is to be a Brahmin, or like to be an acharya, like to be a guru, you must be born in the Brahmin family. There is no one from a lower caste can get to that level.
That, interestingly enough, is not true. Now there are a lot of people who believe it,
Right.
and there are certain societies, I'm sure, in India and Nepal who practice that, but there are other societies who are completely caste blind. So, for instance, and you'll go to Satsanga Society in India and Nepal.
Okay.
Nobody cares what you are, and you can rise to the highest heights spiritually. You can become a great teacher. You can become an acharya. Nobody even asks where you were born. Okay. Same thing in the Ramakrishna Mission Vedanta Society, the Chinmaya Mission, which is here and in India. I went on to that's right. You mentioned it in my introduction. So in 2005, I embarked on a 30-city tour.
Right, in India.
Yeah,
right?
a lecture tour.
Yep.
And I was sponsored by an organization called Vivekananda Kendra.
Okay.
And I was with all of these workers, these volunteers who are dedicating their lives to growing awareness of certain social issues in India. And they told me that they're not allowed to discuss caste. By that I mean that
The discrimination in the caste, or
no. In terms, they can talk about the idea of caste.
Right.
But let's say we're both volunteers for VK.
right.
I can't say, so Sagar, what is your
Oh,
caste?
gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
I see what you mean.
I
Yeah.
can't tell you.
Right.
It's absolutely blind.
Okay.
So the good news is that there is a tremendous amount of resistance to caste bigotry that is growing larger and larger in India. What we as Hindus have to do, first of all, is educate those people who still practice caste bigotry and let them know that not only are they harming themselves spiritually, because they really are.
Right.
I would tell anybody honestly and openly, if you have any negative feelings towards somebody simply because of who they were born to, then you've got some karma to work out. It is incumbent upon every Hindu to understand that we are all manifestations of Brahman.
Right.
Okay?
The rishi, like they say, everyone's the children of rishis. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the same way that I would tell someone, tell a white American, if you harbor ill feelings toward black Americans just because they're black,
Right.
and you call yourself a Christian, you've got some spiritual work to do. So I say the same thing to any Hindu, that we have to break out of this mold. Okay.
Fred, I thank you for bringing this up, and thank you for explaining what exactly our Vedas says, right? So,
Yes.
as you stated, none of any Shastras or Vedas says anything about Dalits or anything about following this practice to go to heaven or hell, right? If you
Yeah.
but that's the sad part. Like, where do the people get this from? Where did they get it, and where they continue to believe, and why is there no any intervention?
I will tell you. I will tell you part of that. Why there is no intervention. That I have to blame the religious leaders who don't intervene.
Who don't speak about it.
There are plenty of religious leaders who do intervene. I just gave a couple of examples, but there are religious leaders who don't, and I'm very sad that they don't. And any priest, any guru who doesn't say that this caste bigotry is wrong, who doesn't strongly advise against treating Dalits as so-called untouchables.
Right.
I think that they're doing a great disservice. Now, here's another thing, too. We need to show the world that Hinduism is more egalitarian, because so many people believe that it's central to Hinduism, meaning they believe that you can't have Hinduism without caste. In the same way, you can't have...
But I think you can have a caste as long as, but don't discriminate based on that.
Yes.
Have a caste, have a last name.
Okay,
But,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
That you can't have caste bigotry.
Right.
You can't have Hinduism without caste bigotry. Okay? There was an article, actually there was an event at the University of Michigan recently. I just found this out yesterday.
Oh, really?
And they invited this speaker to come in. And he is actually asking for the destruction of Hinduism. He believes that caste bigotry and Hinduism are so interlocked that Hinduism needs to be eliminated from the face of the earth. Now that's horrible. Can you imagine a speaker at a college coming in saying we need to erase Christianity from the face of the earth? Can you imagine? Or Islam? My God, you'd have a riot.
I know.
In my introduction, you mentioned my affiliation with the Hindu American Foundation.
Right.
I want to talk about that for a second, because this is very important to the subject. We have to answer all of these questions on a regular basis. We answer them to the media. We answer them in education. We get calls and letters all the time from people wanting to know about not just caste, but a lot of things on social issues in Hinduism.
Right.
We came out with a letter, an essay,
Okay.
a very well-researched essay on caste bigotry that is available on our website. And we spoke to many academics and spiritual leaders who all they all agree with what I'm telling you.
Right.
And that document is available online, and people who go to halfsite.org, that's HAF.
Halfsite.org.
Yeah,
Right.
HAFSITE, halfsite.org, and look for our caste report, and they'll get an education. And remember this is so important. Do you know I think you might have heard this. Do you know who did a tremendous amount of evil in separating the castes in India? The British.
I've heard about it.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
They encouraged caste bigotry because the modus operandi, as it's referred to, of the British has always been divide and conquer. If I can get you, if somebody else can get you and me fighting,
Right.
well, then we're not going to join forces and fight them.
Correct. Exactly. No, I have heard
Right?
about their philosophy or their policy.
Exactly.
How they did that. Yeah.
So, but the thing of it is, the British colonization ended in 1947.
Right.
For us to keep on as a community practicing this vile prejudice is just wrong. We just can't keep blaming the British for something that happened 75 years ago.
Exactly. I think I'll go back to your point, that point you made, like how the religious leaders are not doing enough to emphasize and let people know about this.
Yes.
Because I really hope, because you are involved with a lot of religious organizations yourself, right?
Yeah,
So
through Interfaith
I-
Dialogue
yep.
Association, yes.
I hope you can work with the Nepali community, Bhutanese community, because there are, in population-wise, all around the U.S., there are about almost 100,000 Bhutanese all around in the U.S.
Yeah.
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 And that's a big population. In fact, in Harrisburg, the Bhutanese established one temple, and there another temple in process.
Both in Harrisburg.
Both in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. There's in Columbus, I think more toward the Reynoldsburg area, they have established temple, the Hindu temple. So it's growing, and there are people very active in this, but I want them to be
Educated.
more
Yes,
educated
yes.
and make sure that you just don't blindly keep following the thing of caste and discriminating people. And
Right.
I'm not saying they are or they aren't, but I'm saying people used to. I have seen it. We are from the same place. I have seen how people practice. I have seen how people talk. I have seen how people put certain type of group of people in corner and so other people in other corners. So when their gurus are around and when their pujas are happening, how certain group of people has to be in the back. I have seen that. Just
Really?
because, just because
So-
of
so
caste.
do you-
Not here in Nepal. I haven't been to the temple that I just mentioned.
Okay.
But my point is, I think there should be a place where people can go talk to the gurus. There are like 4 or 5 big gurus that they keep going around, and they do Puran.
Yeah.
They do Puran 5 days, 7 days, 11 days Puran people do. And Bhutanese and Nepalese, mostly Bhutanese, they regard them very highly.
Certainly.
And I think they need to start speaking up about this topic. They need to start telling.
Absolutely, because you know that if we were talking about, say, Christian religious leaders, let's say
Right.
that you had 4 or 5 big Christian leaders, and they were touring, and they would come to a place, and you try to put people in the back. If they were good Christian leaders,
Right.
they'd say, "What are you people doing in the corner?
Right.
Get out of here! Come here!" Right? And we need to make sure that the Hindu leaders have that kind of mindset to lift people up, not keep them dark.
Exactly.
Do you know? For instance, there's an effort now to create a Bhutanese Hindu temple here in this town.
We have tried. Yep.
Yeah.
You're talking about Krishna and Narayan, and there are a few people. Yep.
There are a few people.
I have attended a few meetings. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So have I.
Okay.
And I was at a meeting with the city of Kentwood when they had their eye on a property. It didn't work out.
Okay.
Regardless, I am sure that at some point there will be a Bhutanese Hindu temple. Maybe next year, maybe 10 years from now. But I have every faith that it will happen. Do you know? Let's say there was a temple open right now. Do you know if Dalits would be allowed in the temple? Do you have any idea?
I don't think they would, People would probably not say it publicly, but they will talk about in back. Or if Dalits were allowed in the temple, some of the high caste people would stop going to that temple. That's my belief.
Really?
Yes.
That's terrible.
I'm not gonna point fingers at anyone, but I think if Dalits were allowed in those temples and do everything some of the high caste people are allowed to do, I think high caste people will stop going to that temple.
That is not true of the West Michigan Hindu Temple. Just so you're aware, there's never been any concern for people's caste.
No, that's why I think I found you, and this is, I guess you don't want to say mission, but this is something I want to find out.
Yeah.
Because people are following some cruel, some bad practices in the name of religion, and it's not even in the book. That's what I want to find out. Because like, if this practice would be written in the book, that would just, I think, I would have no more faith in the religion.
Right.
But it's not. But people are practicing in a way. It just makes me.
Krishna said, I created the four castes after their qualities and gifts. Think about that. I created the four castes after their qualities and gifts, not who their daddy was, but what is in their heart, what motivates them in life.
Right.
Are they big, strong people, but maybe not great intelligence? Well, then maybe that's where they belong, is labor. Maybe they have a great mind and a very weak body, but they can get into education. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's just how life works.
No,
But no, there is nothing that says that. And I would encourage you to read our Caste Report. I think it'll be very illuminating, and maybe because I'm happy to partner with you and anybody else on this. We need to educate the community. What happened was, back several years ago, when I was introduced to the Bhutanese community, and introduced to the very sad story of the ethnic cleansing that happened in Bhutan.
Oh, that
right?
that is the truth, and that is very sad.
Yeah,
part.
yeah. So I embraced the community, and as a matter of fact, the West Michigan Hindu Temple named me as the liaison, the connector between the temple and the Bhutanese community.
Okay.
So that is how I have acted, and I've acted out of compassion for all of your families,
Right.
because of what you've gone through, and because I'm very proud to see how you have just really flourished here in the Grand Rapids area. So I've been very excited about that. And then when I hear about caste discrimination, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. I have given, some good time and effort into helping the Bhutanese community out, and then to realize that other people may be excluded.
I think this is something you should probably know. This is not just happening here. I think this is something that's deep in the root, because when my parents grew up, it was taught by their parents.
I understand that.
It's just something so deep that it's so hard for people to change. They know, because this, like you said before, just based on the caste, there's no way this guy could be impure, or this person could be lower than you are, right?
Right.
There's no way. I think everybody knows that. But deep inside their brain, it's like, no, God said something. I shouldn't do that. I'm like, no. So anything this guy touches turns into something impure.
Here's the thing. It can change, and here's a perfect example. I grew up when whites felt the same way about blacks in this country, to some degree, that they were not just lower income or even lower intelligence,
Right.
but that they were actually impure, which is why in the South, as you probably know, there were white drinking fountains and black drinking fountains.
That was a segregation. They called it Jim Crow, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
White restrooms and black restrooms.
White school and black schools
Yes,
and everything.
and because they were not just talking about, well, we're better than you are. It's actually, you are impure, and I do not want to put my mouth on a near a drinking fountain that a black person's mouth has been. So I have seen, even though our race relations are still greatly challenged in this country, you know that, especially in the last few years. It's been quite terrible because of the current administration and other things. But it's still better than it was back in the 1950s because you don't have separate restrooms, you don't have separate drinking fountains, you don't have separate waiting areas at train stations and airports and all of this, and any black person can go to any hotel.
Right.
Okay, so things are better than they were. It took a tremendous amount of work on the part of both the black community and the white progressive community. So what needs to happen is there needs to be a revolution of thought, particularly in your generation.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
And I am hopeful that we can make a difference.
No, I really hope so too. I really hope so, because the way or the extreme level of practice from my parents' generation is not what I believe in, or like that's not what I practice. Right, because I'm different. I don't believe so many things my parents and their generation believes, and I think that's already some good signs to start with.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of time, what people say is, don't force anything. It will happen when it's supposed to happen, and it will happen slowly, and that's what don't agree with. I'm like, no. If something's bad, don't wait for 20, 30, 40 years to change it. Change it now.
That's what people said about slavery. They said, oh, it'll just die out. Yeah, thank you very much. Well, that might be true, but what about those people who are slaves at this minute?
Exactly.
What about those poor Dalit families who feel ostracized? And one of the reasons that the West Michigan Hindu Temple is as interested in the Bhutanese community to encourage me to fulfill this role, being the go-between, the mediator, if you will, or liaison, is because we don't want to see people just convert. While we accept, yes, people do convert religions, and I would be a hypocrite if I didn't say, hey, people should go with the religion they like.
Right.
But when you have people who change a religion for the sole reason that religion is mistreating them, that's a very...
No, so that's exactly my point. There's 2 points I want to make. One thing, if I would belong to Dalit family, why would I stay in Hindu religion?
I have no idea why you would want to do that.
No, I would never. Because if this religion treat me badly, if this religion thinks whatever I touch is impure, and especially in the Poojas, which are considered very, very spiritual and something highly, I can't even be around. I can't do certain things other people are doing. Or it's just, if someone thinks me so lowly just because of my caste in this, there's no reason why anyone would stay in this religion.
No,
Isn't that right?
No, absolutely.
And that's the fundamental problem with this right now. And I don't blame why people change it.
No.
Treat them equally and see how that goes. Treat people equally, right?
Yes.
And then you can start analyzing. Okay, everything's all equal. Let's see what happens. Or let's analyze how that change people's perspective. That's a one point. I think if people are really worried about preserving or the religion or trying to prevent people from living the religion, that's one thing people should work on. Because majority of people who are changing religion is from the considered lower caste.
And you know what? There are multiple ways that people of good faith and good conscience can go about changing the system.
Right.
One way is one community at a time.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
and if we can make a difference here in Grand Rapids and show the rest of the country how successful we are,
We are.
and show them the nonsense, the absolute nonsense of thinking that somebody is impure because of where they were born, who they were born to,
Right.
then I don't like to say that we would shame them into changing, but we would make them take a good, hard look. Why do they believe what they believe? Why do they believe that there is, why do they believe this needs to continue?
Oh, so let me suggest something. So
Yes.
you meet with a lot of Bhutanese and leaders, and you have very good knowledge of people around here in the Bhutanese community, right?
Yes.
So I suggest you start whenever you meet or whenever you go to the meetings, start by asking, what do you guys think about the caste system? Start by asking, do you believe in it?
Mm-hmm.
Have you practiced before? Let's see how the reaction would be. Start with that one, okay, and see what kind of reaction you get and what do you think, and just analyze the people around and how they react and how the situation would be. Okay, so
Yep.
that's my suggestion for you, Fred. I really want to thank you. We probably spent over an hour talking about it, and I know we can talk on and on and on about this topic.
We probably
I am
could.
very passionate about this topic, and there are few other topics I wanted to touch on, but I think
Well, I can come back sometime.
Yeah, I would really appreciate if you come back and we touch on some other topics.
Sure.
And let's. I really hope this conversation. I really wish someone older generation would listen, but they probably won't because they don't speak English. But I think whoever.
But
listens,
the people, wait a minute, the older, like people my age, don't speak English, but the people, say, in their 40s.
They do.
Yeah,
Yes,
they do.
They do. So yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like there are people who would still benefit from this show and listening and just hearing what we talked about. And I really hope they learn through you, someone who has spent many years and who has chose to be a Hindu, not by default, and you have practiced and you have more than 30 years I guess I would say practice and being involved.
Now more than 40.
More than 40 years. That one thing is very clear: there is nothing in the Vedas or in the Shastras talked about the caste. That so you should, the people whoever discriminate people based on a caste in the name of religion is doing it wrong.
Absolutely.
Absolutely wrong. So you should not do that. And I also the gurus and acharyas and who do Puran and who do Poojas, please let people know there's nothing, I guess, wrong with someone from lower caste, consider lower caste, being around in the Poojas and being involved equally as some of the Brahmins.
Here's this.
Yeah.
What people sometimes don't know is some of the greatest saints in Hindu Dharma
Right.
come from lower castes.
See,
There you go.
Yeah, I
Boom.
mean, I think, hey, I really hope you come back again, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it, what you talked about. I want to touch on more topics. I hope we set something up in January, February. Let's see how that goes.
We can do that.
Thank you, Fred. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Sagar.
Yep, nice talking to you.
You too.